Hello, everyone, and welcome to Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast in all of the internet. My name is Jordan.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining on this episode 221 of the podcast. We have the wonderful Caro himself, Kerry Chandler, on the show. How's it going, Caro?
I'm great. How are y'all?
Good.
Cool. And Kara Seta is joining us to talk about Metroidvanias today. We also got a couple things in the news. We got the Pokemon Presents dropped, Splatfest results, Embracer Group's controversial potential investor, and much more. But before we get into all that, how's everyone doing today?
Pretty good. I had a pretty fun weekend. I'm trying to remember everything I did. I went to Cidercade on Friday. That was a ton of fun.
Did you play the Monkey Ball machine?
I was just going to say, unfortunately, they got rid of the Monkey Ball machine.
They did?
Yeah.
What?
Which makes sense because it was broken. The screen was fucked up. The banana would get stuck. If you pulled too hard back, the whole console would come up on the joystick.
Shit.
I know, but it's a shame because I was gonna make an offer on that busted machine and see if I could fix it myself. But it's gone now. But that's what I get for not making a move on it. And then on Saturday, I did Matt Stoner's storytelling show, Hyde Park Storytelling, which was at Batch Kalachi this go round, which was a ton of fun, man. Matt, if you're listening, thank you so much for having me on your show. It was really fun, man. There were a lot of really fun stories, a lot of really sad stories. I told a story about how I got abandoned at a Walgreens parking lot in Ruidoso, New Mexico. It was fun. It had some laughs. We had some guffaws. It was a pretty good time, but yeah, I had a pretty good weekend. What about you, Patrick? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's a big week. Lots going on. My wife's traveling, and it's my kids' first day back at school tomorrow, actually. A lot of transition going on over here, so a lot of mixed emotions in the air in our house right now, with lots of job changes and school starting and stuff. But
how was camp?
He did some camps this summer and not some other ones, or not every week. So the last week or two, we've just been hanging out, actually.
Oh, okay, very good.
But yeah, things are all right. Jordan?
Today particularly has been a roller coaster of emotions for kind of silly reasons. I had bought tickets to go see Oppenheimer in IMAX, and I convinced in my brain that it was tomorrow. We're recording this on a Monday, and it was yesterday, Sunday. So I missed my tickets. And so I was really kind of upset. And then I started all the ones in Austin are sold out. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. The only other one I know of is in Dallas, and I don't really feel like driving to Dallas to see this. And then I looked it up. There's actually a 70 millimeter projector at the IMAX in San Antonio.
San Antonio, yeah.
Yep. And I was like, you know what? And they had plenty of seats available. It was not even close to sold out. It's maybe 33 to 40%. So I called up my dad and I was like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow at 4:15 p.m.? You want to go see a 3-hour movie about the atomic bomb? And he was like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yes, it is. I can confirm it's a great movie to bring your dad to. I brought my dad to it as well. Yeah. But I'm sure by now it's better too. But I know Stefan, friend of the show, he was on for the Mario movie episode. He went and saw it there on the first weekend or whatever that it came out. And the reel, the 70 millimeter reel is so long that it broke and it just didn't work. So hopefully by this point in the run, they figured out how to actually play the thing. But I do hear that's the best way to watch it.
They're literally only playing it tomorrow and Wednesday. And by Thursday, it switches over to Blue Beetle and they're not playing it anymore, or at least in 70 millimeter. So that's why I was like, man, I'm getting in right at the last minute, but I'm really excited to go check that out with my dad. So, but anyway, so it was very low and then back up. And it's oh wait, this will be great. And this past week was pretty fun. I had a photo shoot and stuff like that. Try to keep busy during these WGA SAG after strikes before I can go back to work. But anyway, Kerry Seta, how you doing?
I'm all right. I'm a teacher. My wife and I are both teachers, and we actually went back to school last week. And our school is overcrowded. We got like 5,000 students, and we're not built for it. And they like tore down 2 of our buildings, but they didn't build anything to replace them yet. And so we got like classrooms in old former locker rooms, like your kids sitting in like the shop. And then we're gonna probably be on the national news because a bus attendant like punched a kid, and it was on camera. It's like y'all might have already seen it. It's already making the news.
I have not.
It's wild.
I'm gonna Google it though.
It is absolutely wild. But everything's going fine for me. My classes are good. I haven't punched a kid. It's all good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I would recommend you keep that streak.
Yeah, exactly.
Not punching kids.
17 years without punching a kid. I'm on track. No, but otherwise, no, it's all good. I just been, working all day and trying to have the energy to play a video game at night, but not much.
I feel you.
Awesome. Well, last week we did an episode on turn-based RPGs. Really fun episode. We got, as always, so much great discussion in the Discord. Just some quick shout outs to a lot of the people involved in that. DCD, Segovia, Jay, Swampy Southpaw, AV, Cool Uncle Vince, Hans, Emma, Medium Quality. Definitely join the Discord and be part of the conversation. The podcast channel now is always going off after the new episode drops and continues through the week and discussing the topic and other details from the episode.
It's got another genre episode this week to pour through in the podcast channel.
Over on the YouTube, Hans said, great episode. We got a comment from Schnoz 55662 said, episode 220, how does this channel only have 352 subscribers? Somebody please explain. I suppose that's us that would have to explain. And I think
it's taken that Manscaped promo, baby.
We have focused on doing the show, not promoting it. And I honestly sometimes have nightmares about it succeeding in ways that like beyond the scope that we currently
You're
have.
afraid you would just get like hooked on drugs and
the fame would get to me. You know what I mean? No, it's just more like I love our community, and there's always room for somebody else to join, but I feel like if we exploded, I'd be a little bit sad about that loss. But of a smaller,
I think long story short, we don't do YouTube shorts, which is probably why we haven't.
That's what I was gonna say. It's because you don't do shorts. My son started his channel, started doing shorts, and he's just it's just crazy how much traffic he gets.
Hell yeah. Well, have him shout us out.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
And then SRF 1031 said, in response to our discussion about turn-based RPGs, the younger generations, because of phones and social media, are in the age of now and severely lack patience, and turn-based RPGs definitely require patience. And more, but I think there is definitely, we'd mentioned that sort of sentiment. Obviously it's painting with a broad stroke to say everybody, and also I think that has affected even me, right? Like I have less of a patience and shorter attention span because of the current climate. But I do think whether or not it's true, that might be one of the reasons people don't make the games as much, right? Like
that's why they're not making them. Yeah.
And then Sprowlix over on Instagram said that FF fanfare hit different. Thank you to everyone who commented. If I missed you, I apologize. Sometimes we get, a lot of comments nowadays, and I'm thankful for that, but I apologize. I can't shout everybody out. And then, if you're listening to this episode here on Metroidvanias and you hear something either in the news or the main topic, you got something to share with us, definitely send us a DM, post on YouTube. Definitely hit like and subscribe on YouTube and join our Discord and be part of the conversation there too. And I think with that, we can start talking about this week's news. First up is some patents that Nintendo filed related to Tears of the Kingdom, the newest Zelda game. Obviously, I don't know enough about the legality of this versus the ethics, but I think when we get to patents for video game stuff, it gets into a gray area of stuff that might be technically legal, but I think isn't really ethical. And obviously there's international issues here with patents, right? Sometimes patent laws in different places are different. Point being, Nintendo has patented apparently made a lot of patent filings for Tears of the Kingdom. Some stuff like maybe you can give them a little more leeway with some of their like the Ultra Hand when you're on a vehicle, being able to move things and stuff like that, which it sounds like their physics system for being on vehicles was completely different than a lot of other physics systems for movement on vehicles and stuff like that, moving platforms. So that's interesting, and I suppose they're within their rights. But they also patented some weird stuff like their loading screens and stuff. Apparently it's just a ton of stuff. And I think I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I'm kind of like, I don't know, leery of patents in general and copyrights in general and all that kind of stuff. I know people got to make money, but it gets a little gray area when you're talking about stuff that like this kind of stuff seems.
And when it's
shady.
These big corporations doing it,
that too, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like the stuff with like loading screens during fast travel. Like games have been doing that forever. It's just nobody thought to patent it, right? You know, it's like I think patenting game mechanics is a very slippery slope, you know, and I think that it is going to stifle creativity off of an industry that for decades has only been able to innovate based on growing off the kind of shared game mechanics from every game that came before it, right? So, you know, yeah, I mean, I think there's some really cool stuff that they did new in Tears of the Kingdom, and I get that they would want to, you know, patent that stuff, but not allowing that to be in other games, I think is a really slippery slope, and I don't agree with this. Also, stuff like Ultra Hand and moving things, like, you know, Gary's mod has been doing that for fucking forever. So like, you know, it's not like Zelda came up with it. They were just the first ones to use it in a Zelda game, right? So, you know, I think it's fun to look through this article and look at these patents because the little stickmen and the patents are cute and really
the
funny.
Arrow with the lightning bolts and stuff.
Yeah, but I think this might be a bridge too far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and Nintendo is just galling because they borrowed so much. Like, I mean, they just straight up ripped off like Atari like crazy before they did the Nintendo. Like so many of their early video game forays is just like Pong ripoffs and stuff. I mean, yeah. True. And I mean, Zelda wouldn't exist without Tower of Jiraga, but you don't see Namco suing Nintendo for that. And
Donkey Kong wouldn't exist without King Kong, and they even beat the fuckers at their own lawsuit on that
exactly.
one. So. Yeah.
All right, next up is the Pokemon Presents that we were aware of last week, but did not get to watch. David, I think did you have a prediction for this one that came right, or am I making that up?
Yeah, well, I just had a hope, right? I mean, it was like, that was what the Final Fantasy fanfare was last episode. I did a little video edit, but yeah, it's, my only hope was that Pokemon trading card game would be shadow dropped or dropped day of, for the day, and it was, and that's excellent. As along with Pokemon Stadium 2, do NSO. The rest of this, though, I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch this. I've like skimmed it, but the reaction I've heard from pretty much everybody is that this was not worth waking up early for. Did any of you guys watch this?
I watched it fully after I woke up late. So yes, but I didn't wake up early for it. And I would agree. It was very whatever. I don't know. It was like 30 minutes of material that could have been an email. That's kind of how it felt.
That's been the last several of them.
Truly.
Yeah. And it was funny. My partner Valerie was there when I was like eating breakfast watching it, and she was like, this Detective Pikachu 2 game looks like a 3DS game. And I was just like, yes.
This is a bad looking game. This is like maybe one of the worst looking like Nintendo exclusive games like on the Switch. Like that's rough, dude.
Dude. And then I kind of started to tune out. Yeah.
Do you think it was probably originally intended for the 3DS and it got delayed because of COVID, and then the 3DS got chopped and like, all right, well, let's switch it to the Switch?
We've been hearing about this game for a long time. Like weirdly officially announced in some like footnote on some Pokemon thing. Like I want to say like 4 years ago, but I could be wrong about that.
I don't know. I bet you anything they were working on this game for the 3DS back when they were like, oh, the Wii U still has a chance or whatever. And then they pushed the Switch forward, and then they probably moved some of the teams that were working on this onto the, you know, making sure they could make the new Pokemon games for the Switch architecture. And then they just kind of like put it on hold for a while. Right. And then they were like, oh yeah, we fucking were working on that game. Maybe let's finish it up. And then just kind of like picked up where they left off. Like that would be my guess. But maybe they're just going for this aesthetic and this is what they want. But I don't want to harp on it too much. But
The other thing I was looking forward to that they didn't talk about at all was the stop animation Netflix series, the hotel. Mm-hmm. What is it called?
Yeah, the Pokemon Concierge or something like that.
Yeah, I actually do want to watch that because I love animation, and stop animation is always like so fascinating to watch just because from the technical aspect it's insane to make. And then they dropped a bunch of other like animes that I'm just like not 8 years old anymore, and I just couldn't be bothered. But I did appreciate the very extensive title for the Scarlet and Violet event, which was the official title is Get Mew and Mewtwo, add Mew to your team and challenge a Mewtwo with the mightiest mark. That's the official title of the whole event.
Hell yeah.
I love it.
Let's go.
I love it.
I love it.
All right.
I think it's just not for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I love Pokemon, but I don't know. Scarlet and Violet put a bad taste in my mouth, honestly.
Who is this for then? Why do they do 30-minute long presentations of mobile games?
For the millions of people that play the mobile games. The mobile games are insanely popular. I mean, like there's a Pokemon chat at my work, like in the work chats, and like they were fucking so excited for all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, I think for Merryweather or Fairweather Pokemon fans like us, are not the intended audience for this, right? And I mean, if you look at it, it's got 2.3 million views on this thing, right? Like people are watching it, people are interested, people want this kind of stuff. It's just, we want something meatier, right? But it's like, they have these schedules that they need to hit and they have all these updates to push out and they got to announce them. So I've heard that this animation that's like based on the Pokemon cards, like the Pokemon card, like anime, or I don't know if it's anime really, but I think it's a Western animation. I've heard it's actually pretty good. So I'm kind of interested to check that out, especially since, spoiler alert, I've been playing a shit ton of Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy on NSO. We'll talk about that at the end of the show, but if you haven't played that game before, that is one of the best Game Boy games, like for sure. And I think maybe even the best Pokemon game on the Game Boy, and there are a lot of great Pokemon games on the Game Boy, so definitely excited about that drop. It made it all worth it for me. But yeah
is this the first time they mentioned the DLC release dates?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
It's the first I heard of them.
So I think that was also the big thing for a lot of people is Scarlet and Violet DLC release dates, but
I thought they did that in the Direct, but maybe they just gave us a small window. But I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe they did. I don't know.
Anyway, we shouldn't talk about Pokemon. We don't know anything about it. This is why we need Summer on for this.
It's okay. I mean, there's a reason we're not doing an episode.
I mean, like I said, I love Pokemon. I just have lost my enthusiasm for it.
Yeah,
honestly,
understandable. Well, to that point, I mean, there was a little bit of other Pokemon news that there was an interview. I guess at whatever big Pokemon event, there was sort of a group interview, and the sort of headlines that are coming out of this are that, I guess the closest to acknowledging the lack of quality that you're going to get, there was a quote that's been kind of tossed around where they're talking about was having these products able to be introduced and yada yada yada, and trying to like their schedule while making sure that we're ensuring really quality products. So I don't know. It doesn't really mean anything, but
it was total PR speak in this. It's going around at the moment, but it's like. What I liked about this, he's like, I think in general, if you look at the path we've taken up till now has been this constant release, always regularly releasing products on a fixed yearly cadence, you might say. I think we're still operating that way, but there's more and more conversation. So it's like, it's just like we're talking about it. It's just like we heard you, but we don't care because you guys are still buying this stuff. Yeah.
Well, we'll move on then and briefly mention the Splatfest that just happened in Splatoon 3, which was money versus fame versus love. Just wrapped up this past weekend, and just like in real life, money wins everything. That's
cream. Cash rules everything around me.
Which is weird that money wasn't the most popular team, right? I'm sorry, that Love was.
I think it was. Yeah.
Money was the most popular team, but I was confused by that because I feel like I played all mirror matches against Love. Not that I was playing a ton the whole weekend, so maybe it was just Money got a lot of votes and then Love got a lot of players. I don't know, but it was weird.
Same for me. I mean, I played only on Sunday personally, but I was only getting Love matches. Yeah.
Just weird. I don't know if that's anyway. If you're a Splatoon enthusiast who can explain that to me, I would love to understand it. Because otherwise I'm starting to feel like Nintendo rigged it. Not really, but it was
for the investors. They had to preserve capitalism.
Yeah, they had to make sure that Love doesn't win. Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about Quake 2, kind of out of nowhere. This very quality port of Quake 2 has just popped up on everything, like on anywhere you want to play this, right? Pretty much. I think it's on PC, it's on Switch, it's on the other consoles, and I think maybe even both, right? Like, can you get it on PS4? I feel like I heard it's everywhere. So
yeah, it's on every platform pretty much.
So that's pretty cool, and it sounds like it's got like some additional content and just like really. I mean, I don't know that the Switch version has all of this stuff. You correct me if I'm wrong.
It does.
Okay, it does.
Yeah. From what I understand, like pretty much the Switch is the best way to play this.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's got, it's gonna run at 60 FPS constant the whole time, even with split screen up to like 8 players or something ridiculous, right? It's got gyro, right? Which Xbox doesn't have, but PlayStation does have. But it's got the portable form factor, right? So unless you have a Steam Deck and you prefer to play that way, Switch is kind of the most feature complete version of this game that's out there currently. And I mean, this is Night Dive Studios, MVG. They already did a Quake 1 remaster. This is like the re-release here. And the first Quake release was awesome. And so, I have no doubt this is also incredible. And they just added so much more shit to this. I think it even includes like Quake 2 64, like in full, cool. And it's got a whole brand new campaign made by Machine Head Studios and stuff like that. So, or Machine Games.
Machine Gun.
Whoever makes Wolfenstein. But it's really cool to see. Friend of the show, MVG, doing another one.
Nice. So I guess there you go. Check that out if you're into that. And then we also got a little tease from another friend of the show, Marcus Horn. We did an interview with them about their games, Siactro games, the Torii games. They are going to be showing off a new game at what is it called? The Sonic Amateur Games Expo.
Yeah, Sage,
which is September 1st. I think it's like a virtual thing, right? My understanding. But anyway, they showed a little teaser, which makes it look like maybe there's a new Torii game, right?
Yeah, there is. It's going to be, I think it's called Torii Saturn or Saturn Torii, something like that. But it's basically, it's got a Steam page up now. You can wishlist it. The Torii games are fantastic, and this one looks really good. It's got some cool new mechanics. There's like kind of basically like a drop dash. Like I think instead of holding a run button, now you can like slam into the ground and you'll get a boost as you're running forward. It looks really clean. And Sage is really cool, by the way. I don't know if you guys have ever followed anything from Sage before, but I mean, it's it started off as like a Sonic fan game, like convention essentially, but now it's kind of expanded into just like any game that kind of feels somewhat in that realm, So there will still be a lot of Sonic fan games, but there's also Mario fan games. There's games that just kind of feel like Sonic. There's just inventive platformers. In fact, I was watching the trailer for Sage this year, and Torii was at the very end of it. So I watched like a 25-minute trailer just to see the like 10 seconds of footage at the end. But the only thing I could think of the whole time was like, Patrick, you should try to get your game into Sage.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think it would do well with this crowd, I think.
I do have a little bit of Sonic in the game in just terms of momentum and speed and stuff.
Totally.
So that's making me think about that. Yeah. Interesting. Good to know. Well, next up, we're going to be talking about Embracer Group. So as you may recall, I don't know exactly how long this was ago. I want to say a couple months, maybe just a handful of weeks, but it feels like a couple months. We got the news that Embracer Group was going to have to tighten the belt and close some studios and that sort of thing. And what's just come out is apparently that there was a collapsed deal with the Saudi Arabian, I guess they have an investment firm that has invested a lot in video games, and they now have their own like Saudi funded group, Savvy Games. Apparently it was a deal that they were working on for $2 billion. I'm guessing they were going to dump into Embracer Group. But for whatever reason that didn't work out. And that's in part why they've had to scale back.
Yeah. A couple months ago when this all broke, they were saying it was some sort of $2 billion deal that fell out, but we didn't know who it was. So I think that's now we know who it is, and it's
So don't they already own like the Savvy Games through the public? It's like the Public Investor Fund, which is actually like the government's investment program into other things, specifically like media and entertainment. So don't they already own like a decent chunk of Embracer stock?
This is not the first time that this particular fund has actually put money into Embracer Group. This was just an additional promised $2 billion that for them, whatever reason, has been taken away. And so now, obviously, Embracer Group, who was like, oh, we've got $2 billion coming in, we can scoop up all these fucking studios and all these IPs, is now like, oh shit, like we have to let all these people go that we just bought up, right? That's $2 billion of everyone's paychecks that are just like out the window, right?
I'm very curious as to like why the deal fell through, but also, it's like, don't count your chickens until they hatch kind of situation, like, I don't know. I've always, my mom's a CPA. She's like, don't spend money until it's actually in your bank account, like, like 101, accounting 101. So I'm more curious as to how the deal and why the deal fell through. I'd be curious to know that, but because I'm assuming they still own all the stock in Embracer Group. It's not like this deal fell through and they sold their stake.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, the Saudi government has been putting money into everything, right? Yep. That like billions into esports,
the golf,
golf, wrestling,
big thing at the PGA. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, we're working with, like Mohammed bin Salman is like on the boards of this, and he's not like the best guy. He's straight up will murder people, right? So it's like, it's I think it's very sus to like get in bed with the Saudi government personally. And I think it's just like, Embracer Group doesn't need to own 1,000 studios, right? Like
exactly
work up like everybody else, and like this like foreign capital like coming out of nowhere like usually comes with some kind of catch. And so I'd be very wary about these kinds of deals going forward. Not like anybody who is listening to my take on this that's making any sorts of decisions, but this is just real sad to see. And
we're gonna move on to a couple Metroid related rumors and such. Jordan, get ready. I'm gonna need your expertise here. But
Metroid here too. We're good.
Yeah, that's right. Metroid Prime 4, long ago announced. It's long ago rebooted or whatever, restarted by Retro Studios. We haven't really heard anything official. However, there is oddly an Xbox podcast called Xbox Era, where a person on there claims that they have talked to somebody who has seen the game, and the sort of Jordan, can you explain what this person is saying, and how credible is any of this?
Yeah, so basically they're saying that the game is going to be larger, not necessarily open world, but larger environments to explore in, and that the graphics are just quote unbelievable or incredible. And honestly, this feels like such like non-news to me, because it's like we just played Metroid Prime Remastered and it looks incredible. Like it is one of the best looking games on the Switch, and we know they're using that hardware to make their new game like very clearly. So yeah, of course it's going to look incredible. And it's like, I've played Metroid Prime 3. I kind of see where they're going with that. And that was 15 years ago when that game came out, maybe more. I can't remember what is time, doesn't matter. So yeah, to me, this felt like a non-news, very safe thing to say about a game, but it is exciting to hear someone even say that they've know someone who's seen the game. Because we have seen nothing. So, but I mean,
we've seen a logo. We've seen a logo.
Yeah. We saw a pretty low quality JPEG of Samus in a corridor.
Hell yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
What would you think if, you know, they're saying here that it's not open world, it's like open area, but the size is like the size of the areas is similar to Halo Infinite, which was open world. So it seems like it's going to be pretty massive. Like Metroid has always been kind of a corridor game. You know, it's about getting like kind of lost in like kind of a maze of stuff. I mean, a lot of Metroidvanias are like that. Like, Jordan, do you personally think that like Metroid would work with a more open format?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there are like decently sized areas in the Prime games at certain points. I think it'd work fine because you just there have been more 3D style Metroidvania games. The one I can specifically think of off the top of my head is called Recore, which was made by people who actually worked on the original Prime game. And it works really well because you just have different areas that you can access based on the different abilities that you have at that time. So yeah, totally. Right. It can work. And I totally trust pretty much anything Retro Studios does by this point. I mean, their track record is pretty flawless. Like, I can't think of a game by Retro Studios that is bad. It's like they're all at least an 8 or above, you know? Like, yeah, man, I think it would totally work. Whatever ideas they have, I'm here for it.
Cool.
Nice. Well, that gives us a chance to talk about Metroid Prime 4, even if these we should take all this with a grain of salt because I don't know who this guy is, and also it seems like a safe prediction that's being made here.
It's nice to just utter its name.
Yeah, totally.
Well, potentially in some other Metroid news that got us on this topic for this week is that it's come out that Mercury Steam, who was the developer Nintendo worked with for Metroid Dread, as well as Fusion. Am I correct about that?
No.
Samus Returns.
Samus Returns. Yeah.
My bad. This is where, again, I need Jordan's help, or anybody that's here. That's not me. So anyway, point being, news has come out that Mercury Steam is working on 2 large undisclosed titles. This comes from some sort of financial report from somebody that has some sort of stake in them. So it's not an official announcement. So again, I don't know. You have to take this as something that some investor in them has disclosed. But 2 large undisclosed titles from Mercury Steam. Wouldn't you think maybe one of those is a Nintendo game? I don't know. What do we think about this?
Yeah, I think 100%. At least one of them has got to be a Metroid Dread follow-up, if not a remake of an earlier game like they did with Samus Returns. They've Super really Metroid. Shown... Yeah, I mean, Metroid Dread is like maybe the best Metroid game ever.
It's my favorite Metroid,
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. They really nailed it. They understand it more than anything. And so I think you got to think that one of those is that. Headcanon, I'd love for them to be working on another 2D Castlevania too. You know, I mean, they've shown they can do it. They, they made they made Lords of Shadow 1 and 2, which were 3D kind of more action games, but they also did a Lords of Shadow 3DS game that was much more of a Metroidvania.
No, sorry.
Do you disagree?
I've been playing this game, that game in preparation for this. I'll talk about it later.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's at least more like a Metroidvania.
It's closer.
Than Lords
Yeah,
of
it's
Shadow
definitely closer.
Is, But I think, especially after having played Samus Returns and Metroid Dread, I could see them taking another stab at a 2D Castlevania and killing it. So if they want to stay within this genre, I think they've proven that they can do it. And I think that they've proven that they're, those franchises would be in capable hands and sell well when they work on them. So I hope it's those personally.
Yeah. And with the Netflix series and everything, I mean, I think the iron is hot, so to speak, for a new Castlevania. We got to just convince Konami, that there's money to be made outside of pachinko machines. And they've been doing those collections. So
that being said, they have been more open with like lending out their IP, specifically with the Dead Cells Castlevania game.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
Then the Snake Eater remake.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
so
true.
I could see my pie in the sky hope is a Symphony of the Night remake by Mercury Steam. That would be.
It looks like the Metroid Dread. Oh,
that would be my like pie in the sky dream, because with the Snake Eater remake, I'm like, dude, if they don't work with Kojima again, like I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to work with Igarashi again either. So I think they would get some other outside studio to develop some sort of remake. So that's my pie in the sky dream.
New game. We don't need it. We don't need it. I think Symphony of the Night's pretty much perfect. We could just keep
why
that.
hasn't Symphony of the Night been ported to the Switch yet?
There'd be more.
Because they're working on a new one.
Do a remaster. Just make it widescreen or something. You know what I mean? It's like that's fine. You don't need to remake that. I think you just put it out on modern platforms. I want to see a new game. I want to see a new Castlevania game. It's been too long. Even if Igarashi's not included, it's like, I mean, they fucking nailed Metroid Dread, and I know they had
play Bloodstained, David. All right, it's
Bloodstained. Bloodstained is so good.
Anyway, we'll get into all this in the main topic. Yeah.
Well, it's exciting to hear what they're working on. Very relevant, and what definitely caused us to want to do the main topic this week. And I think that closes out our news. And we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking all about the genre of video games called the Metroidvania. All right, we're back. And this week we are talking about Metroidvanias. With this news that Mercury Steam is working on 2 big unannounced games, presumably one of them could be a Metroidvania. We've been talking about doing this show for a long time. Digging into the genre. So here's our excuse to do it. I know I'm a pretty big Metroidvania fan. I know Jordan and Kerry, I feel like y'all are stair steps. Y'all are above me, but
it's my favorite genre of game. Yeah, so it's big.
So I think, if y'all want to talk about it, but I know also, David, I know you're kind of iffy on the genre.
Well, no, I mean, I love the genre as well. I think, for me, I mean, I just beat a Metroidvania like yesterday. I've been playing these kinds of games for forever. And it's definitely a genre that is not left wanting on the Switch. There's like a million Metroidvanias on the Switch. It's a very popular genre for indie game creators to make, because it's like, you can have, it's not like you have to make like a million bespoke levels. You can like craft a really tight Metroidvania experience and keep it pretty contained, but have it be an ever-evolving kind of map, right? But I think my frustration sometimes with Metroidvanias comes with, I'll put the game down and then like fucking forget what my abilities are, where I'm going, what the map is, all that kind of stuff, right? So for me, that's like I jump between games a lot. It's hard for me to finish Metroidvanias a lot of the times, especially when they're longer. But I do love the genre very much so.
Well, yeah, I hope that we can maybe take a moment to discuss some of the, criticisms of the genre, or some of the pain points of the genre, because I think some games solve those in better ways than others. And and maybe we can state those later. But first, why don't we just talk about the name and the early iterations of these games, the first ones. I know, Jordan, you did a little bit of research into this, and Kerry, obviously you too. So Jordan, do you want to take us away, or one of you want to start?
Yeah, I'll just start a little bit and then jump in wherever you feel to jump in. But the term comes from Metroid and Castlevania. So I would argue that Metroid's kind of like the originator of this like almost like non-linear style of gameplay, where you have a big map, but you can't go everywhere on the map all at once until you start acquiring more abilities. And then Castlevania, really specifically Castlevania Symphony of the Night, kind of took a lot of those ideas and kind of expanded it as well to like a wider scope. As far as like where the term came from, it was a bit murky when I was doing research. All I could really actually figure out was don't call it Castleroid or Castleroid.
I can speak to it a little bit. If you know Jeremy Parrish, who was, he's one of the like legends of video game journalism and podcasting or whatever. He's often credited with it because he's really big on it. He used to run Metroidvania.com, where he just cataloged every game that could possibly, and talked about, could this be a Metroidvania? But he's like, no, it was my friend Scott Sharkey at 1UP. He did it. And then Scott Sharkey's like, yeah, I did it, but it was like as a joke because I was kind of annoyed at how every game in like 1998 or 1999 was trying to be Metroid and Symphony of the Night, you know. And so I just said all these Metroidvanias, and then people just ran with it. So whatever. But that's kind of, but it's funny because Parrish on his the Retronauts podcast, which is like his baby, he did like this series on him, and he's like, he says very technically the first one to him is Metroid, but before Castlevania, he says like another similar one is the Clash of Demon Head. If you ever played that.
No.
You know, the namesake of the band from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So, yeah.
I think also, you know, just like two major influences on the genre is like Yoshio Sakamoto, who was the director of your favorite Metroid games. I don't believe he was the director on the first Metroid game, but he was the director on like Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and he's still the producer to this day. So even when Mercury Steam made it, he was the producer on it, and he had a very like solid hand, very hands-on producer, you know, making sure that the series continues on forward. And then the other one, and more specifically Castlevania, is Koji Igarashi. And he was famous for Symphony of the Night. And then all of the Game Boy Advance Castlevanias that you love, all the DS Castlevanias that you love, like he really kind of pushed the genre forward as well. Right. Just in the sheer number of games that he made too. So it's always interesting. Yeah, like those are the two main figures I feel like for Metroidvanias that really kind of like started the genre as we know it today. There's obviously like new people coming up all the time. You know, since Nintendo didn't want to make Metroids for a long time, indie developers took up the mantle. Much respect. I love that. But like in the Castlevania, you know, fandom, it's like we have the classic Vanias and the Iga Vanias, right? And then when you're in the Metroidvania, you got your Metroid, capital M Metroidvanias, and your Iga Vanias. So Iga is like, it's hard to, his shadow on it is so big.
Totally. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's like, it's almost weird that they're not just called Metroid-likes, you know, because it's like for so long before Symphony of the Night, you know, Castlevania was known for just like really difficult level-based platforming action games, you know? Exactly. And those games are great too, but it's also like there's a reason that when Symphony of the Night came out, that's just what Castlevania was going forward, right? It like totally was like, okay, I can only see this franchise working with this type of game going forward. And it is just a perfect fit for that franchise.
And it's funny because Iga, he said he was not trying to, he says, we were inspired by Nintendo, but it wasn't Metroid we were inspired by, it was Zelda. He's like, with Symphony of the Night, we were trying to make a Castlevania that felt like a Zelda game, but because of the way the 2D side-scrolling, people just, he said it seemed more like a Metroid, and he's like, that's, I don't, he didn't say it's cool, but he said that's cool, basically. So
he said whatever. That's cool in Japanese.
Yes, he said, it's cool.
That's cool. I mean, tips his cowboy hat.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that got us all excited to talk, but I think that could maybe lead us into one of our next major points, which is what defines a Metroidvania and also what excludes one. And is Zelda a Metroidvania, like where you have to get the hook shot to do this, to do that, or, you know, classic Zelda, right? That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I found that the other day when I was playing Oracle of Ages. It was like, you know, I mean, and that happens in any of the 2D Zelda games, right? It's like, oh, here's a bush. So I'm gated off from going to this place, right? Until I can get a thing where I can burn down that bush. And then now I've opened up this part of the map, right? But you really wouldn't call a Zelda a Metroidvania game, right?
Pokemon has that also.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, arguably lots of video. I mean, you know, even, you know, you can't get to place B until you do task A, right? Like, so what makes a Metroidvania then if it's not just a gating off?
I would argue, I mean, so Metroidvania's a couple typical features. One was like, very specifically, there's also platforming. So specifically with Zelda, there's no platforming. It's top down. You can't jump. or you can jump, but it's like with the rock feather, and it's just not the same as like a verticality. So I would argue that would be like, I mean, what differentiates a Zelda from a Metroid, right?
Totally.
It's just the platforming action.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically, I mean, at least classic Metroidvanias are side-scrolling platformers, right? And then another big feature, which is similar to Zelda, but I feel like slightly different as well, is interconnected maps with an emphasis on like exploration, and usually ends up being backtracking. Like once you get a certain item, you can go backtrack here and be like, oh, okay, now I can access this area. And Metroidvanias also have a lot of secret rooms, which I guess Zelda has too, but I feel like it's like more of an emphasis in Metroidvania games, like, oh, secret rooms with secret power-ups and stuff like that too.
Or if not secret rooms, then just like secret passageways to other parts of the map to ease that backtracking when you go back to those areas, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think that map can't be overstated enough, because I do think, like you said, Zelda has a map, but it's like you go into a dungeon and you can't really get from that dungeon to anything else. But in a Metroidvania, there might be, or typically, right? Like each area has a couple different entrances and exits, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as like progression goes, like Metroidvanias are typically very non-linear. So it's not like I'm going from the left side of the screen all the way to the right side of the screen. It's like up, down, left, right, all over the place, trying to figure out where you're trying to go. Sometimes can be very frustrating, but I love it. I love the, for me, it's helpful to take little notes, be like, okay, this part of the map, I need this thing, that kind of stuff. But
and I think if I could jump in there real quick, I think a good element of Metroidvania level design and game design is seeing, it's always having the entrance to an area where it's clearly like, oh, okay, I need to get up there. And then you try to jump and you can't reach it, or you try to wall climb and you can't wall climb, or it's like you try to, it's like, oh, clearly at some point I'll get a double jump and be able to go in that entrance. But it has to be clear enough for you to clock it, so that when you finally do get that ability, you're like, oh, I remember exactly where I need to fucking go. You know what I mean? So I think that's like
100%.
One of the, because you could obfuscate that kind of stuff, but that's where a lot of the frustration comes in. And if you make that really clear, I think that's good Metroidvania design there.
That's a psychological thing of just like having it just out of reach is very, very important to it. Yeah, totally.
That often teases you with what your upgrades are going to be too, right? You may not know
the abilities, as it's been called.
Yeah, which I think is what you're about to maybe get into, Jordan. So I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, just like that phrase, it's called like soft lock gates, requiring certain items to continue, is just the technical video game term. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, Patrick, you're the game designer. You tell us. Soft lock, right?
Not made.
It's soft lock gates, right, Patrick?
Gates.
You know this.
Soft lock.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just like different abilities that you have to get to certain areas. Pretty common ones, at least in Metroidvanias, it's like the double jump, wall jump, dash, some sort of weapon that can get you somewhere,
like a more powerful weapon.
For sure. Or something that can like swing you across a platform are all pretty common ones. And then I think another one of like the key features that is not necessarily talked about as much is just like more environmental storytelling. And I think this happens a lot in like Metroid. So there's a couple moments that jump in my mind, but one that like always really stuck with me is like in Metroid Fusion, you're technically in that timeline, I think Ridley's just dead. Like by Metroid 4, Ridley is gone. But you're running around in this and you see a big frozen Ridley. And if you played all the other Metroids, you're like, oh shit, I know what that is. And then you come back later and it's gone. And you're like, oh shit, that's not good.
That's not good. Yeah.
It's like a precursor moment. And then, but it doesn't ever explicitly state that. It's just you running by noticing these things. So, and then I think Metroid Dread does it fantastically. There's just a lot of like environmental storytelling in the background, telling the story that without having to expressly say it, it's not having to be like a cutscene of a character explaining what's going on. So I think that's another like really big thing with Metroidvania is I love, because I'm a big fan of like show, don't tell.
Totally.
You know?
Oftentimes too. I mean, combat is a huge part of Metroidvanias as well, right? You had that here on the list, and then I think Patrick, you might have just put this in, but melee versus ranged combat.
Okay, yeah, I didn't put that. That's what I was asking.
That's one of the capital M Metroid versus Igavania things. Like the Igavanias are mostly melee, the Metroids are mostly
range.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, I was thinking of Guacamelee in my head. I was like, because that one's like a great Metroidvania that's all literally melee. It's just your fist and your feet.
Yeah, and I think there are exceptions to combat being really important. I think this is what's interesting about a genre, right? And I think why I like doing this episode and why this part is really fascinating to me is because, you know, we come up with these genres, but there are those gray areas between anything about like the Ori games, right? The Ori games don't have combat. I mean, they kind of do.
Oh no, they do. They
but do. Like, it's not as much of a focus.
It's not as centric, and it's more. Yeah, you're not really in. Yeah, exactly. Or Owlboy.
It doesn't feel like Owlboy. Yeah. It doesn't feel...
Gato Roboto is a non-combat one.
Yeah.
And, or at least when you're in cat form anyway.
Yeah, it's like
Monster Sanctuary is turn-based, you know. You know.
It's interesting to me those like ones that kind of take one of these elements and either throw it out or modify it, or it's a little more like a different genre. But I think combat is usually in there, right? Pretty intense combat too, I think is the other thing. Metroidvania is known for being hard combat, I feel like.
If they don't have combat, they at least have like a lot of difficulty, right? Yeah. It's a lot of like failing and trying again. And I think another thing that comes with Metroidvanias often too is save locations. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's a lot of it is this risk reward of like, oh, I know this is a save room. I can go here and save. And then you're out exploring and you're in like an increasingly difficult area. And you're like, do I want to turn back and resave now that I've like unlocked more of the map? Or do I want to press forward and press my luck and hope that there's a save room coming up, right? Yeah. It's not a lot of like auto saving in Metroidvanias, even in modern ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add that difficulty in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or to make it more difficult, to make it that risk reward you're talking about.
Risk reward, exactly, yeah.
Totally. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's pretty broadly what the genre is about. And so next up we have like the problems with the genre. So I'm not sure who wrote this, but please take over.
I threw this in.
That's fair. Yeah.
I was thinking about David in part because we've talked about some of his problems with the genre, but I'm also thinking about like Hollow Knight, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. And some of the problems I've heard people make or criticism of the game I've heard is that I think the beginning of Metroidvanias in general can be a little bit, I guess like boring or is almost the appropriate word. Like,
no, that's like by design, right?
Right, because you don't
start out with no abilities.
You don't have the interesting abilities. What I think maybe we also missed on the typical features of the genre when we said side-scrolling platformer is like ideally really good movement. Right? Like tight controls that feel or controls that feel really good to play because you're going to be backtracking, because you're going to get lost. It should at least feel fun to wander, right?
That's like an immediate lose for me if I try out a Metroidvania and you feel just like sluggish. Like, I don't want to play this. This is
right. And there's the problem that they have, and I think this is a genre problem of like we're withholding all the fun movement stuff. So we have to convince you to play this in the first 10 to 20 minutes before you get the first upgrade where movement becomes fun. You know what I mean? Like, or like, how do we balance that? That's an interesting design problem I think they face. Right.
See, I feel like the reason for that, or the way that balance, there is kind of a balance there, even though you're right. It's like I just played through Pseudo Regalia on my Steam Deck. Excellent game. I just beat it. When I first started playing it, I almost put it down like immediately because I was like, oh my God, I'm moving so fucking slow. I have no dash. I have no blah, blah, blah. You know, and then I was like, okay, let's stick with it. I'm definitely going to find things. I know this is a Metroidvania, right? But I think the trade-off is at the beginning when your movement abilities are way lower, you're seeing stuff for the first time. You know what I mean? It's like when you then need to later on backtrack, that backtracking even though you've seen these areas, you don't give a shit because you're flying through, you're double jumping through it, you're sliding, you're doing all this crazy shit, right? But in that early bit, when you don't have the movement, at least you're seeing like new areas and you're learning about the map and you're doing that like exploration, right? And so I think that's kind of where some of that lies for me, and like kind of how that works in most of these games.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you make it interesting by just the nature of the game at first, right? Yeah.
Right.
And then the justification for wanting to go back to areas is that the movement feels really good.
I feel like that goes a little bit back to like atmosphere and environment is like so important in these games.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that is not there when you don't have the abilities, it just forget about it. I'm done. I'm bored.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the next one on your list?
Yeah, I think it's the getting lost that like it's almost impossible to play Metroidvania without at least once feeling like I don't know where to go. Even if you feel like you know the map well, either you feel like you don't know the map well and you're getting lost when you're trying to find where to go, or you feel like I know this map but I don't know where I'm supposed to go right now, right? Like, sure. And that's again a problem that I think is an interesting design challenge for this because it's just kind of intrinsic to the genre a little bit.
Yeah.
How do we talked about it a little bit where you make it clear, the clarity of like,
right.
I saw that area and I remember now that I have the double jump or now that I have the ranged whatever, right. I should go there. But it's not always easy to remember that.
I think one thing that helps is having like very visually distinct areas. So,
yes.
You know, like that's how like Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, right? It's all monochrome. So every area has like a very specific texture to it. Mm-hmm. So, oh, I'm in this texture area. I'm in that texture area. Or, you play like, Symphony of the Night and, the Colosseum does not look anything like the Clock Tower. It doesn't look anything like the Catacombs, right? So that's useful. And then you got to have a good map, right? And that's the problem with the original Metroid. That's why one of the reasons Zero Mission is such a big improvement on the original Metroid is because you have a map. Because without a map, that game is just, and it's not even if you ever look at a map of Metroid, it's actually a pretty small game. But I never don't get lost playing the original Metroid.
Yeah.
Like I'm just lost the whole time. I'm just wandering until I get to the next thing.
Yeah. That was my main sticking point with Pseudo Regalia too. And I loved that game. And I think the game mitigates this by being very short. I mean, that's a game where if you know what you're doing, you can beat that game in like 2 or 3 hours, right? Speedrunners, have gotten it down to like 15 minutes or something ridiculous. But it's like that game has a bit of a problem where it doesn't have a map. I think it was purposeful that they didn't include that. But then it's done in this kind of like N64 texture style. So the textures are like every room kind of looks a little samey, because of that. But then also it's in 3D too, so it's like it's a 3D platformer. So it's like, so being turned around and then having verticality and 360-degree movement only made that more complicated in my mind. I only beat that game because I like looked up guides that like had someone drew a fucking map, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the place that I hadn't been to. Like, and so I think just for some people that's great. But yeah, a map I think is super clutch.
That sounds brutally confusing.
Yeah. Again, it's a short game, so it's not a huge deal, but it was nice to have maps. Yes.
Like that's like one of my very few gripes of Hollow Knight, which is also one of my very favorite video games ever, is that you have to always have that map relic equipped. I do anyway. I can't.
Yeah.
Like I have to. I like will unequip it for boss fights and then have to equip it again because otherwise I can't. Even though that game's also very good at having super visually distinct areas and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah. I will say too, like this is something that designers have acknowledged as a problem within the genre, and it has gotten better over time.
Oh yeah.
Like, because I mean, the Metroid Dread map is probably the best Metroidvania map of all time. It is so helpful.
It's so helpful. Yeah, it's very, very helpful compared
to
almost
too
any
helpful.
of them. Like, I was about to say that. Yes, it's
so
almost
much
too helpful.
Information on
it makes the game like way easy. I mean, if it wasn't for how hard some of the combat and platforming are in that game, it would make it too easy almost. But I think it's balanced.
I think it's balanced really well for like the next point on this list of like taking a break. And I think that's what it really comes down to. Like, if you take a break from this game for like a week and then you come back to the game, you're like, I don't know which abilities I need for what sections of the map. So for me, I really appreciated that in Metroid Dread, where it's just like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I need for this, and I know I do not have it, or I do have it.
You can put markers too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you're at a thing where you know you're going to have to come back to this eventually, you can mark that and then easily go back to it.
And Samus Returns was really good in that way too. Samus Returns, it marks each area percentage just like Metroid Dread does. So because I 100% it, I have to 100% every Metroidvania I play if I can. And I did both of those, and I was just like, compared to doing it in like, Symphony of the Night or something where you're sitting there at 187% completion. You're like, what freaking room am I missing? I'm
What
missing,
does that
like,
mean? Yeah.
where is that?
Yeah.
Taking a break was the next thing on this list, and I think you could argue that that's a problem with any game, right? And then that's not on the game designer, that's on you for taking a break. But
yeah, we should all just play games straight through, never take breaks.
But in a realistic
have that
world,
machine that puts chips in your mouth.
I find it way worse if RPGs.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, I think I put down Persona 4. I'm like 50 hours into Persona 4, and I put it down in April, and I'm like, am I going to have to start this game again?
Yeah,
like,
you're done.
Like, how am I going to even have any? I don't know. I'm not going to know anything when I come back to that.
I think for me, why I think of Metroidvanias and I think of other genres, I think of action genres, because I feel like I don't remember the buttons anymore, right? Like in my like ability to, because especially Metroidvanias have tough combat usually, and especially difficult bosses. If I took a break on a boss battle, then like it feels stupid to want to go run around and get good at the game again, because like I'm on the boss battle, I should do this, but maybe that's what I should, you know what I mean? I kind of feel like I don't know what the solution for this is. Is it a training room? Is it, or is it just go run around in an easy area and get better at the game again and remind yourself of the controls and where you are and that kind of,
I put down Jedi Survivor for Tears of the Kingdom, and I went back to it the other day, and I was just immediately getting slaughtered by like stormtroopers and stuff. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea how any of the I didn't know what my abilities were.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like Metroidvanias also have a very like slow ramp up in difficulty that's like really subtle until you stop playing. And then when you go back, you're like, oh shit. I got really good at this game and I didn't realize how good I was at this game until I left it alone for a week. Like, for sure.
Totally.
And I think, like other genres have mitigated this a lot better. Like some games, especially like turn-based RPGs, where they're like, okay, we're going to have a story. This is what happened on the last, before you stop. This is what happened, which is beautiful. But like, you can't really do that for a Metroidvania. Like if you stop, you lose all of the skills that you've built up subtly over time. Like definitely a problem.
Yeah, Dragon Quest XI is really cool with that. Every time you turn it on, it tells you what you did last. It's like awesome. I want every single game to have that.
Is an option, Well, this next thing is a little weird, but I think it's specific to this genre, and that's sort of that secret element of this game / that sort of obfuscation of what power-ups do sometimes. That environmental storytelling, the lack of clarity, is that sometimes it's unclear how to progress. Maybe you didn't realize. I think the way that they do a good job of this is designing. You get a new power up and you have to use it to get out of that area. It's pretty typical in the genre. But maybe you did that and you took a break, and now you don't remember that you have that double jump or something. And I feel like it can be frustrating to figure out how to progress in these games sometimes. And I think a Metroid is kind of bad about this sometimes for new players. Where like
David Jaffe would agree with you on this one.
Well, I think that, some people will put, like Metroid Dread, for example, there are certain blocks that you have to shoot, right? I mean, it's kind of a typical thing. And because a lot of games copied Metroid, there are, things that look like walls that aren't if you just shoot at them, right? Or if you have a rocket and shoot, or I don't, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes you'll get to a place and you'll just be like, I have been everywhere 3 times and there's nowhere to go. And if you had just shot at the wall, you could have moved forward or something. Do you know what I'm talking about in this?
Oh, totally.
So I think it's a barrier to entry for newer players. And it also can be frustrating as a veteran player of a Metroidvania at times. So
I've been replaying Bloodstained. I played it when it came out, and then I've been replaying it now. And I think it has some issues of that where I'm just running around trying to figure out where to go. But I also like got in a habit, and this is not necessarily a good thing, but of just shooting every wall in every room that I'm in. Like that is, I feel insane. I'm like literally just attacking every wall. Like, where's going to be the break in the wall that I know that needs to be there? But it's like, as a new gamer to this genre, that makes no sense. Like that is not a realistic expectation for any game that you ever play.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, it's
I think Metroid 2 taught us that, having that one room where you just have to happen to bomb that one part to be able to get out, or else you'll just never. That's a very big frustration. I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, that's sort of an old school gamer thing that you pick up. Like playing with my kid, he'll often be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going left. Check if there's a secret over here." You know what I mean? And it's like, but that's not the objective. It's go right, you know? And it's like,
because that one level in Super Mario Brothers 2 did it, and so we're gonna all do it now,
right? Or like, because in Donkey Kong Country, occasionally there's a letter.
You got a free man, and you got a free man in there. Yeah,
I checked behind every fucking shrine ending in Tears of the Kingdom, even though none of them had a hidden thing behind it. I was like, "There's got to be one back here," because there's one in Breath of the Wild.
I was saying, I thought you were about to tell me one did, and I'm gonna have to go.
No, not to my knowledge. Maybe I didn't get all of them.
I have done a good amount of those shrines, and I have done the exact same thing. There's nothing behind it, because it happened like once or twice in Breath of the Wild, and it drove me nuts, and it makes me feel insane. It makes me feel like not right in the head. I'm gonna do it every way anyway. Yeah.
Well, and then I don't know that this is so much a problem with the genre as maybe. Again, another thing that's tough for new players is how hard bosses can be in these games. I mean, I think just in general, combat can be really hard in these games, but especially boss battles, there can be like a huge spike.
There's like the Mummy Demastered is such a good Metroidvania, and I've never beaten it because that final boss is crazy. Like it's like a 20-minute fight with multiple phases, and if you die, then it's just start over at the same point.
Yeah.
And I think
it's brutal.
And that might tie into the other problem with this genre that you just made me think of, which is those save points, right? I think a well-designed one has the save point at every tough spot.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes it feels like you have to walk through 2 rooms or whatever to get to it.
Well, and watch a cutscene again sometimes.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason that people are so thrown off by the difficulty of boss battles in particular is that the games are so focused on exploration, right? And it's hitting that part of your brain where it's like, I'm like, killing all this chaff along the way to like get whatever items or upgrades that I need. But it's like you've spent so long just like running around and trying to figure out the puzzle of where you need to go next. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I have to be like a skilled gamer right now. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you have to kind of like flip your brain into like, I'm good at combat mode. You know what I mean? And I know like that was really difficult for me when I was replaying, what's the Circle of the Moon on the Castlevania Advance collection. Is I made it pretty much, and I was able to, you can cheese some bosses in that game with your special abilities and stuff, but I made it to Dracula. I was like, fuck, man, I have not been like getting proficient at combat and it's good enough in this game to take on this boss right now.
Yeah, it makes me think of Hollow Knight and the Mantis Lords, because I feel like the Mantis Lords fight in Hollow Knight is kind of where that game takes off. You know what I mean?
Or like it's the Ornstein and Smo of Hollow Knight. Yeah,
it's the like gate that you have to get past to be like, oh, this is how good I have to be to keep progressing in this game. Up until that point, I'm not saying it's not hard, but it's not as hard as it gets from there on out. And
yeah.
Real quickly, also just like we talked about the genre conventions already, but I thought it'd be fun to maybe talk about like adjacent genres. I think about like Mega Man games. You can't really call Mega Man games Metroidvanias, but they're close, right? Yeah. And then they
have elements, especially the X ones.
Of like, you beat an area, you get an upgrade, and there is other areas, but it's different, right?
And like Mega Man X, you get abilities and then you can go back and get secret rooms and secret power-ups using those abilities. It lets you go. I think X was the first one that really had that I know of.
Yeah, but X, it's like a feature. It's like, I want to build my badass, sick armor.
My Mega Man Gundam. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I love X so much.
Yeah, I feel like in the Mega Man games, like getting those new things are always in service of the combat, not of the exploration.
Totally.
That's kind of what makes it different.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Shovel Knight's a good one for that too. Shovel Knight's got a lot of exploration, a lot of secret rooms, non-linear paths to things, but again, it doesn't really have that ability gating, so it's like almost, but not there.
Yeah. And then roguelikes or roguelites have a lot of elements of Metroidvanias too, but obviously the sort of clear, fresh start is different there too.
Yeah, but you're definitely like, you're a completely different person by the end than you were at the beginning. And
there can be ability gating in some of them, right? Like Dead Cells, right, will have those like things that you have to have. Not only do you have to have got it, but you have to have like beaten the game in a certain way to get some of them, and then go back and do the others. And that's the one that comes to my mind is Dead Cells. I was gonna say Returnal is a 3D one that is a 3D roguelike that has a lot of that ability gating stuff to it also.
We should talk about why we like Metroidvanias. I mean, we've probably been talking about it a little bit, but I know all of us are fans to various degrees, but like what is so good about this genre for y'all?
Yeah, for me, I love 2D platformers is what I've learned. And like over time, I've learned like as much as I love Super Mario World, it's not my favorite type of platformer. I want something that's like more combat focused and more like literally, and that could be either I have a whip or I have a gun. I don't care. I just want to have some sort of like combat mixed in with the challenging platforming that I need to do. And so for me, that's what I really like about them is just, it's like this marriage of two different concepts that it really just hits my brain in the right way of like, and then also like, I think I'm an exploratory gamer. I never took that quiz or whatever, but I think that's the type of gamer I am because I love to see like every part of the world that the developer has designed, and Metroidvanias are really good about that. It's like they have this huge world that's like specifically designed for you to be able to go through and experience. And I think that's for me what hits me. I'm like, this is so addicting because it's like that marriage of elements. Yeah.
I'll piggyback on that and say all of what you just said, plus, and this, I've never really played like Souls-like games much, but I think what I really love about a lot of Metroidvanias is that sense of accomplishment that I'm getting better at the game. And it's like
the drip feed of serotonin or
whatever, not only am I getting better because of the mechanics, and my upgrades are getting better, but I am literally getting better at the game, and you're throwing harder and harder bosses at me, and then that satisfaction of beating them after X amount of attempts, sometimes a lot of attempts feels really good.
Yeah, I'm totally there. Like I am a big Souls fan, and that's what I love about Souls, and that's one thing I love about Metroidvanias. Yeah, is that sense that I'm actually getting better as a gamer. My skills are increasing, and not just with the combat and the platforming, but the exploration, the problem solving. Right?
Yeah.
That's one like I love to play randomizers of my favorite Metroidvanias because it becomes this problem. It's like, okay, how do I get up the clock tower without double jump? Because I don't have double jump yet. Or like I did a randomizer run of Symphony of the Night where I didn't get a weapon until like an hour in. So I was just punching everything. And like that's, so I'm like, all right, but I remember the spell. I just, just do the little spells a lot. Well, I ran out of mana. All right, well, what can I do? Or I can, I've got to go, okay, well, it couldn't be here. So it's got to be there. That thing's normally there, but that means that's here. It's a lot of that adds I like that problem solving exploration. And then I love platforming, but I'm like Jordan, like I love Super Mario Brothers. I usually say it's like, but I like the more methodical, slow platforming of like a Symphony of the Night or a Super Metroid where I can think about where I'm going and I'm not racing a clock. And, just like I watch David play through those like crazy e-reader levels, and I'm like, No, that didn't even, I mean, it's fun to watch you do it, but that's not me.
Hell yeah. Well, we'll trade Souls and Mario sometime.
There we go.
But yeah, I sorry to keep bringing up Pseudo Regalia, but it's fresh on my mind. I just finished
need to
it,
play
but
it.
it's incredible. Yeah, it's $6. It's insane. Like how much game you get out of that. But what you guys were talking about there, like with the randomizers, like that's kind of like how that game is built. Like there, you can get a lot of the upgrades in any order, and in fact, I didn't know. I mean, I knew there was a wall run because I saw someone have it at one point, but I couldn't for the life of me fucking figure out like where it was. And so there were whole parts of that game where I was like cheesing my way through areas where like if you had wall run, like this is like super easy. You know what I mean? It's kind of a game that's designed to be played like either one direction or another direction. And either way, you're kind of getting all of them in whatever order that you end up getting them. And so in that way, it's really hard to like watch like walkthroughs or something of that game, right? Because anybody could beat it in any way. But I was really like, especially after having gotten the abilities, I go back to those areas where now I'm just like wall running past this part. And I'm like, holy shit, I spent so long trying to like kick off the wall and like do a flip in the air, like just in order to get up this thing. And I did it. And I had the sense of accomplishment. But, I think that kind of stuff like makes me feel really good when I'm playing one of these games and I can pull something off that I'm not like sequence breaking, right? Is like, you know, whenever you can like build sequence breaking into your game in a really satisfying way, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, and doing some of those, like you think, like when you pull off some of the like incredibly hard Shine Spark puzzles in Metroid Dread, like you feel like I'm MLG, I'm ready for my sponsorship, like that especially when you're doing 100% run of Dread and you're at 98% or 99%, and like I just got to do this one damn Shine Spark, and then you do it, you're like,
yeah,
it's an amazing feeling,
Dude, the Shine Sparks, there's a couple in that game that really took me out 20, 30 minutes of just true. And it felt the dopamine hit when I was done. It was like my brain exploded.
I am the best player at video games ever.
I am a god of video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think sequence breaking also goes back to that like problem solving Karaseto was talking about. It's like, it's really cool. Also, another reason I love this genre is because like I will play this game and then I'll watch a speed run of the game I just played. And I'll be like, this is absolutely insane that someone figured out how to beat this game in like 15 minutes that took me like 10 hours. And it's because they just know all these games have this design of like, okay, you can do it from the get-go, but you have to really know how to use these abilities, It's like really crazy to watch. It's just like another thing I love, just watching speed runs. Like watching the Metroid Dread speed run go down in the first like month,
as new tech is discovered and everything like that,
was so fun. And then I also discovered how like that game was designed to be sequence
broken.
Yes, that was awesome.
It was really cool. Like Mercury Steam was like, yeah, we know you're gonna do this. We're gonna figure out how to like code that into the game too. It's just really fun to watch.
It's a lot of, and watching speedruns will make you a better gamer. It'll make you better mechanically. Like I watching speedruns of like Dark Souls made me better at Dark Souls and so on. Like, and same thing with Symphony of the Night. Like I play Symphony of the Night and I'm just like doing the shield, the shield dash, like the whole game. It's like it changed. Figuring out how to do that, like paradigm shift with that game. It's like, across every room. It's great.
Well, we actually have a handful more notes on this genre topic discussion, but I think we have to kind of start to wrap up. So maybe we can end with recommendations or any other thoughts on the genre that anybody wants to make. I think, like somebody said, David maybe said early on, there's so many Metroidvania games available on the Switch, as well as other platforms. But maybe everybody can shout out a couple of their favorites or recent.
Yeah, I don't know that we have time to like really go into all of them, but we have a list here. We can just like kind of list off of like,
some of the better ones.
Yeah, like Metroid Dread, the Castlevania Advanced Collection, Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, made by Iga, right? Who did the Advanced Collection games.
Yeah, and if you heard that it isn't good on the Switch, they patched it and it's perfect.
That's true.
It's great. Yeah.
You got Hollow Knight, Cave Story Plus, one of the first like indie Metroidvanias. The Ori and the Blind Forest games, Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. We mentioned Guacamelee 1 and 2 earlier. The Messenger is a great game that kind of becomes a Metroidvania, like as you're playing it. And then the last ones you have on here are Axiom Verge, Iconoclasts, Blasphemous, and Gato Roboto.
Yeah, those are all great.
Yeah, I think Gato Roboto and like Pseudo Regalia are like really easy ones for me to recommend because those are games that are like short. You know, you're not going to lose a bunch of time. Like you could honestly beat both of those games in like 1 or 2 sittings, you know, and I think that that's a really good kind of like gateway drug into this genre.
Yeah, and Monster, if you aren't big on the like combat side of it, Monster Sanctuary is a kind of a turn-based Pokemon Metroidvania. I mean, it's still the side-scrolling platforming and all that, but it isn't, you know, the combat is all turn-based.
Yeah.
Call back to last week. And that's a fun game. That's a really fun game.
We could take that. You have a little list here, Jordan, of like the great era of mix and match with Metroidvania.
Yeah, so this genre has been pretty fertile for a while in the indie scene, and I think it is because it's like an easier game to develop as a 2D side-scrolling platformer. But like people have started to mix and match, and so these are just a couple that I really was like, this is really funny. So we got Dead Cells, the roguelike Metroidvania. We got Yoku's Island Express, the pinball Metroidvania. We got SteamWorld Dig 2, the Dig Dug Metroidvania. And then I put Monster Sanctuary, the Pokemon Metroidvania.
Both of the SteamWorld games, SteamWorld Dig games are a lot of fun. Yeah.
SteamWorld Dig 1 is another one that's like really short, easy to recommend, and really easy to get into. Yeah. You can beat that game in 2 sittings.
I got that for free on the Wii U. On the Wii U.
But
maybe real quick before we close out, I think that we do need to ask the question because I've been talking so much about a 3D Metroidvania. You have on here like, do we consider 3D games to be Metroidvanias? And you know, we've got some examples here, and I think that personally, I think you hit it on the head early, Jordan, when you said I think like what makes a Metroidvania, whether it's 2D or 3D, is platforming. I think you have to have platforming to really be considered Metroidvania. I think you could have a lot of exploration based 3D games that have Metroidvania elements that really I wouldn't put them in that genre. But you know, something like Metroid Prime has tons of 3D platforming. Pseudo Regalia has a ton of 3D platforming. Even like the Star Wars, like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor have a lot of platforming as well, in addition to the combat. And I think that that's a big kind of, I think it kind of needs that in order for it to really be considered that genre.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these, like, first of all, yes, I think a 3D game could be considered Metroidvania. I know there are some like diehards that are like, no, 2D side scroller or nothing.
Yeah. So argue about it in the Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you finish listening to the episode.
The YouTube comments, please. We need engagement.
I'm sorry, YouTube comments. There you go.
We need more than 352 subscribers. This needs to get to 10 million subscribers.
Okay, Mr. Beast.
But yeah, I mean, there's even other like ones like Batman Arkham Asylum. I would consider a straight up Metroidvania. The other ones get a little bit more open worldy, but still have elements. But like the first one is like you're in Arkham Asylum. You cannot get to certain parts of Arkham Asylum until you get certain abilities as Batman or certain pieces of equipment, and you are platforming to get there. I'm like, this is a fucking Metroidvania.
Is there a little bit of backtracking in that? I can't remember.
Oh, there's a lot of backtracking.
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, especially because you're in one central, the prison, like, you know, so it's like you're having to go back to areas you were before. Yeah, I would consider it one. And then there's other ones like, you know, Journey to the Savage Planet is one that comes to mind that I played that is like, has a lot of actual platforming in 3D, and it's a first person game, but a lot of the game is gated behind different abilities that you get. Prey 2017, like the reboot of Prey, they said they were very influenced by Metroidvania.
It's a Deus Ex-vania, I think.
Yeah.
That's
Ex-vania.
That's totally fair. And then the other one that I wanted to mention was Control.
Yeah.
Because that one, again, it takes place in one central hub area that you have to kind of like get different abilities to be able to explore fully. That one has a little bit of platforming, but I feel like it's more.
It's got the like verticality, you know.
Yeah, it's verticality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, to answer the question, yes.
Yeah.
I think 3D games are Metroidvanias. I think that's just a natural evolution of it. If you keep the core tenets of what makes the style, whether it's 2D or 3D, doesn't really matter. But
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should wrap this up then. Unless anybody wants to interject something else, I'm going to close it out on our discussion on Metroidvanias. If you're out there listening and, you know, there's a favorite Metroidvania we didn't mention or anything you want to disagree with or agree with, we'd love to hear from you. So definitely send us a note. And with that, we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the games we've been playing recently. I've been playing the same games. Been playing a little bit of Pikmin 4, closing in on that thing, but not playing a ton because my son and I got obsessed with watching a show, and so we kind of fell off. But
what show?
Oh, Steven Universe, strangely.
Good show.
Yeah.
I love Steven Universe.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It's good. My friend Austin's been begging me to watch it for a long time, and finally, we started watching it. But anyway, it was my cousin Vincent's birthday. He's been on the show before a long time ago as a guest, and he's a big Smash player. So he and another friend of mine, and we got together, and we played a ton of Smash the other night. Obviously, I played a bit of the Splatfest. And then I also went to an arcade, our bowling alley over here near my house. We were kind of just watching Steven Universe all day, and my son was like, I want to go get out of the house and do something. So we just went over to the arcade, played a few games. They have some pirate game that's not that great. It's just one of those ones with guns, you know, but there was 30 credits in the game when we sat down to play it. You know what I mean?
Somebody fucked up.
Somebody messed up, which I understand because you're swiping your card and it's not working. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, so we just sat there and played a bunch of this pirate game, which was a ton of fun when you don't care. You know what I mean?
What it was called?
I wish I did. I'm sure it's a freaking Raw. What's the name of that company that I can't think of? Raw Thrills.
Raw Thrills
game. Yeah. They make every game.
Is it Dead Storm Pirates?
It was probably because it was a lot of
it's a shooting
undead,
game.
undead pirates.
Did you have to turn the boat?
Yes, you got to turn the boat. There's
I
wheel
played that
in the
game
middle,
recently.
and there's guns on either side. Yeah,
I played that with my niece, and she loved it. It was fun.
It's a lot more fun when you have free continues.
Exactly. Yeah.
There were other games we played at the arcade, but that was kind of the highlight for me because it was we got 20 continues here. Let's just see what we can do. And we got to the point where I think we're done. We'll leave the next 10 for the next person, you know? So anyway, that's some of the games I've been playing recently. Most of them, I think.
I'll go only to piggyback off that. One time I was at Pinballs and I had an unlimited card because I was with a party, and it built up continues. So on certain games, I just swiped it as many times as I can to try to pay it forward. So I was like, you know what? This builds continues. They can't take this off this machine. So I'm gonna build it up to 30 and then just walk away. But anyway, I've been playing. So I was playing Cult of the Lamb last week, and someone had given me a code, and I played the entire game. Well, I played up until it redoes itself. I don't know. There's a common thing with roguelikes where you beat the game proper and then it's okay, you're going to do the same thing, but harder. So I played that for a bit. I've also been playing Castlevania Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate, which is the 3DS game that came out in between Lords of Shadow 1 and 2. I have been playing it on PC though. And it's actually really nice. The port to PC is the upscale is very tight.
Was it it was released or you're emulating it?
No, it was released for
PC. It's on Steam. Yeah, I have it.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And I would say, that's probably the ideal way to play the game. I can't imagine that the 3DS adds with the second screen much more than a map or something. But what I would say is it is not a Metroidvania. It is more of an action game. It is like, because I was wanting like a Metroidvania, but it is really cool to play it now because it's like, oh, it's Mercury Steam, and it's like feels like a job application to make a Metroid game.
Yeah,
because it has a lot of the elements that you eventually see in Dread and even Samus Returns, of like the action base. And the countering system that comes up in Samus Returns is in this game. So I thought that was really tight. And it has really cool death animations, which is, again, another thing that comes up in Samus Returns and Dread. So for me to play this game and then like know what they made after, it's just really cool to see the progression. So I don't know if I recommend it because Samus Returns and Dread are so much better. But it is cool as like a historical point to just see the progression. Yeah. And then I've also been playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night again. I played it on Switch when it first came out, and everyone said it was really buggy, and I didn't really have that many issues. I had a couple of frame rate drops in like boss battles, but it was nowhere near as buggy as Scarlet and Violet. So I had beat it then, and so now I'm playing it again on a PC just because I had gotten it in like a bundle of some sort, and I wanted to see it on like slightly better hardware. And then also now that they've released all these patches, I might go through and do a Zangetsu run when I'm done, just to see what that's
do
like.
Aurora also. Aurora mode is really fun.
Is Aurora from Child of Light?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
So I might do that after, but I just wanted to play through that again because I actually really enjoy that. And I think Iga still got it, man. That game is very fucking good.
Konami, bring him back.
Yeah.
Stop burning bridges, Konami. With your best developers.
Yeah, man. For a legally distinct Castlevania, he fucking nailed it. It's like everything you want from a progression from Symphony of the Night.
Including the voice actor.
Yeah. Yes. I will say my one criticism is I wish the map was a little bit more detailed, or you had different pins for the map. Like that's a big thing. Like, so it's like, I'll pin a place where I know I need an upgrade, but since I only have one type of pin, I don't know what type of upgrade I need. So when I'm playing a game like that, I'll be like, okay, this pin means I need this upgrade. This pin means I need this upgrade. But besides that, man, it's a fantastic game, man. Very well designed. Got a lot in it. Got a lot to love. But anyway, that's what I've been playing.
Nice. Yeah. I'll go next. Like I said, I beat Pseudo Regalia over the weekend, actually in between some Splatoon matches. And I also played some of the Splatfest on Sunday. I didn't play as much as I wanted to, but I just had a lot of other stuff going on this weekend. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I've been playing some more Fitness Boxing too. At the arcade, I played a lot of Killer Queen. It was my friend Jeremy's birthday. He's been on the show before, and we actually had 10 people there, so it was perfect. We could play 5v5 on the Killer Queen arcade. That was a ton of fun. I also played a lot of like rhythm games there, like My and Waka. Which is so much fucking fun. I want to go back just to play more Waka. I had so much fun with that game. It's really, really difficult. It's one of those ones where it's like on a ring and you're like moving your whole body around. I had a ton of fun playing that. I have been playing a game I can't talk about just yet, but I got a review code for a game that we'll be able to talk about in a couple weeks, I believe.
Metroid Prime 4.
yeah, and that game is Metroid Prime 4. It's done. It's gone gold. No, I randomly picked up Shadow Man Remastered and have been playing some of that just for some nostalgia. That was a really cool game on the N64 and Dreamcast.
Is that Metroidvania-like?
I don't know. I'm not far enough in it to where I could say that. It doesn't seem like it, but maybe.
Okay.
And then what else? And then I guess I'll close with I've just been playing like a ton. Like my new go-to game is Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy Color. Like that game, like seriously, I don't know. Have you guys played it? Like the three of you? Yeah. Like Patrick, I would recommend you pick this up. Like
really?
It is.
Number one, I'm not a big CCG fan, and I'm not a big. I'm kind of not into either of those things. You think I'll still like it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I maybe not. I mean, if you don't like trading card games, maybe not. But it's like, it just is amazing how well this game played on like the Game Boy Color and how well it holds up. to this day. Like it's like it feels very modern. It's like I feel like nowadays, like so many like card games, when they translate to digital, something's lost in translation. It's hard to get the UI right. It's hard to get blah, 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 blah. It's like Pokemon trading card game figured this out like 20, 30 years ago, or not 30 years, like 20 years ago at this point, and nailed it, you know? And it just holds up really well. It moves really fast. It doesn't hold your hand, but it also like is not terribly difficult at the beginning and then ramps up in difficulty as you start fighting more and more of these gym battles or whatever. And just you get this constant cadence of new cards that you're unlocking, and you learn what those cards do while playing, you know? So it's not like you're having to constantly go in and like look at every single card and be like, how do I want to build my deck or whatever? But I'm just amazed at how well this game plays. And, you know, I streamed it, and I had a random person come by who just saw that I was playing it, and they wanted to do card pop with me, because that was something you could do like with the IR camera on the Game Boy Color, where it's like, oh, if you just kind of like link up together, then you both get a free card. And so he was like, hey, I want to come in and just like get a free card. And then we did that, and then we ended up playing a game online. So like the fact that you can play this game online now is like huge, and it's so much fun. And I'm saying this just so more people play it on their Switch so they can play with me online, because I'm having a blast with it. And it, because it's made for the Game Boy too, it's like they keep the matches pretty short. You know, it's not always like 6 prize matches, you know, oftentimes it's like 3 or 4 prizes. And so it's really quick. That's a new great pooping game for me. And I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, that's mainly what I've been playing. I didn't think I played that much, but I've actually been playing a lot this weekend. What about you, Kerry? What have you been playing recently?
I'm always playing a bunch of stuff. So I've been playing Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, started a new character for the season, you know, for the new season on Diablo 4. Final Fantasy 16, but I haven't picked that up in a little while. I just beat Castlevania on the Metroidvania side, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, 100%ed it, 100% soul completion, beat it on Julius mode, played through a randomizer, almost beat the randomizer, and I was like 3/4 of the way through the randomizer. I was like, I want to play something else, so now I'm playing Harmony of Dissonance, because that's the one I've actually never beaten. And so I really love Harmony of Dissonance. I'm loving it. I had a really bad first impression because it looks so ugly at first, but it's really good. I like it a lot. And then so I've been playing that, and then but the thing I've been playing, and there's my daily Marvel Snap addiction, of course. I can't not play an hour of Marvel Snap a day. That's my pooping game right there. But instead of TikTok. But my main thing that I'm just the only game I want to play right now is Baldur's Gate 3. That game is amazing. Like, I'm a D&D. I've been playing D&D since like 2000, 2001. And I used to sponsor a D&D club at the school that I teach at, but I haven't played D&D in like a year, because my group broke up like a year ago, and this is the closest I've ever come to playing just D&D, like with none of the negative stuff. No, we're not stopping for, you know, because someone's got to go take a smoke break or something, or, you know, having to wait 45 minutes while someone is late or whatever. You play. It's so good. It's like you're playing with professional voice actors and the best writers, right? The best writers playing each character, and it's just so good.
Nice. Well, that's it then. That's going to do it for this episode here, episode 221 on Metroidvanias. Kerry, thank you so much for coming back on to join us. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and talk to us about Metroidvanias. Thanks also to milkyway.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. If you're looking for me, Patrick Online, I am PDYX.
You can find me on the internet at Bordan on Discord and Instagram mostly.
I'm pretty much ever on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Kerry? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm Carusetta on Discord, YouTube, Twitch. I think that's about it. Instagram. There you go.
Very good. If you've been hearing Kerry talk about those Souls likes, I know you stream a lot of the Souls games on Twitch. Those are always fun to watch. So definitely shoot Kerry a follow over there. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We got a website, switchheadz.com, and we got our Discord and the Facebook group. We'll have links to both of those in the description of the show. please join us over on the Discord. We're having such a great time over there. Always great discussion, really great community. And boy, howdy, we were all just playing some Splatoon together and had a really good time. So join us over there. But that's going to do it on this episode on Metroidvanias. What a fun time. We could have talked about that shit for fucking ever, man. I feel like we all came with a lot preloaded and ready to go for this episode. We're going to be back next week with another great episode, so don't turn that dial away from Switch Headz, the Switch Headz area of the dial. But in the meantime, gang, you know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Play some Metroidvanias. There's like a fucking million of them on the Switch. Other than that, we love you guys very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.